Okay, we're back. Hello everyone, it is Monday, April 27th. Here for a week of podcasting, very excited, leading up to the Miami Grand Prix this coming weekend. It's race week, yes, finally. It's a sprint weekend, so I don't know what you feel about that. I like sprint weekends. I think more races equals better. I mean, I'd prefer to see an extra qualifying and an extra race than 2 practice sessions. I think that's more entertainment in my mind. I know that's sacrilegious to the purists, but I like racing. What are you gonna do? But before we get to Formula One news, by the way, why do people dislike sprint races? Why do people prefer practice sessions? I think there's also the argument that fewer practice sessions means the cars are less dialed in and there's a bit more random in the mix. Now, you could argue, while a full race practice with a sprint sets things up better than a practice session. I don't know. I'm rambling today. But before we get into Formula One news, I want to talk about something entirely different. And that is, brace yourself, Formula E. Now, I don't currently watch Formula E, like I don't currently watch rallying or IndyCar or NASCAR. I do watch some of the lower categories here and there, F2, F1 Academy. There's only so many hours in the day, right? I'm running in multiple businesses and I make Formula One content. There's only so many things I can focus on at any one time. And I've got to have somewhat of a private life. But this Gen 4 Formula E car looks like a beast. I mean, it looks like a beast. I mean, the appearance of it, I think it looks really cool. The Formula E cars have been a bit hit or miss visually. And by the way, I talked about not liking IndyCar and one of the reasons being that they're ugly. And that seemed to be a little controversial. And that surprised me because part of loving cars and car culture, in my mind, is the aesthetic qualities of these machines, right? I mean, I feel that about planes, probably trains if I liked trains. I don't really care about trains, but if that was a thing for me. Motorcycles, I feel like that's not the be-all and end-all, but it is a constituent part. Anyway, back to Formula E. This Gen 4 car looks great, and it's all-wheel drive. Let's see some of the specs. Capable of reaching speeds in excess of 335 kilometers per hour, which I want to say is about 30 to 40 kph slower than an F1 car, so not far away. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in approximately 1.8 seconds and 0 to 200 kilometers per hour in 4.4 seconds. And that is 1.5 seconds faster than its predecessor, the Gen 3. The Gen 4 will deliver 50% more power in race mode than the current car and will on average be about 10 seconds faster per lap than the current Gen 3 car in qualifying mode. And in attack mode, Gen 4 produces up to 600 kilowatts of power, a 71% increase in base output over the Gen 3 Evo, delivering a performance that pushes the limits of blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's just blurb. So, much faster, because it's all-wheel drive, incredible traction. I'm excited. I think this looks like a great idea. I think this looks like a great direction for Formula E. Clearly not as fast as a Formula One car. I was looking at some lap times. I looked at Monaco. I was quite intrigued by the Monaco speed because both cars race at Monaco and the track's the same, obviously. So in the current Gen 3 model, you're looking at about 130-ish for a lap of Monaco with Gen 3 Formula E cars. Maybe a bit more. Formula 2 is around 120. And Formula 1, Lando put in the fastest ever lap last year. I think it was just under 110. I think it was like 109.7 or something like that. It was something around 110. So if they are 10 seconds a lap faster, and I think they might even be a little more in Monaco, that puts it around Formula 2. So it's about Formula 2 speeds, at least around Monaco. Now, the thing with fully electric cars is that their weight distribution is very low. That's perfect for designing a car. All the batteries are down low. And, the driver's poking their head up out the top, which is, messes things up a bit. But unlike a Formula One car where the whole power unit is higher up, right? With an electric vehicle of any kind, there are very few moving parts. It's incredibly simple in many ways. Most of that weight is much lower, which is great for, center of gravity and all that. So they're not going to have the same level of aero, I would assume, as a Formula One car. They're going to be heavier. The braking's probably not going to be as good, but they're all-wheel drive. An electric motor just delivers immediate torque, right? It's just immediate power. And the center of gravity is lower with the weight distribution. So, very interesting prospect. If you like engineering, it's just an interesting direction that this is going in. With Gen 5, if they got another 10 seconds off, we're getting into Formula One territory. And it's not like Formula One is making leaps and bounds in terms of lap times, right? So, very, very interesting. Are we going to be at a point where they're competing? Maybe Formula E is faster than Formula One. And then what is the fight there? What is that fight going to be? Particularly if Formula One goes back to fully internal combustion turbocharged engines, and then Formula E comes along and is faster. People get what they want, with getting rid of the battery stuff in Formula One, but then at what cost? Are they now slower than Formula E? No, this is all completely theorizing and hypothetical. So very interesting. Very interesting. I'm excited to see what happens next year with that Gen 4 car, with a full complement of Gen 4 cars racing each other around these tracks. Anyway, back to Formula One. Let's go to racingnews365.com. Fantastic news source about Formula One. And, okay. Miami GP set for surprise curveball. And that surprise is potential rain for Sunday. Now, we saw what happened with the rain. I think a Formula One Academy race was cancelled. Was this all last year? I can't even remember. My brain. I think it was Leclerc, right? He binned it on, I think it was a reconnaissance lap to the grid, right? Rather than a formation lap. It was one of those, maybe it was a formation lap. Can't remember. But I've spent a fair amount of time in Florida over the years. And these storms can just appear out of nowhere, dump a ton of rain, and then disappear in its beautiful sky again and heat and sunshine. And I mean, who doesn't love a random rain shower in a Formula One race? I mean, it really does sort the wheat from the chaff, as they say. And if you're on the right part of the track at the right time, you make a good call, you can leapfrog a bunch of cars and be leading and pulling a gap on the rest of the field if they were slow to react, if you're on the right tyre. If you're on a intermediate at the right time and everyone else is on slicks, game over for everyone else. Anyway, so that's a little curveball. So what are they saying? So it looks like Friday and Saturday seem okay, hot and sunny. All good. So the risk of rain for the sprint and qualifying, so that's on the Saturday and a sprint weekend, as we know, that's low. However, attention is firmly on Sunday's Grand Prix, where the forecast becomes more uncertain. I'm quoting here. While temperatures are expected to hover around 30 degrees C, both forecasting models indicate an increased likelihood of scattered showers developing during the afternoon, with rain probabilities rising into the 30 to 40% range. Okay. So creeping up to, flip of a coin, whether it rains or not. Exciting. Who are the great rain drivers? I mean, Lando's pretty good in the rain. Obviously, Verstappen's good in the rain. Lewis is good in the rain. Stroll's good in the rain. Hülkenberg's good in the rain. I say Verstappen's good in the rain, but he did kind of bin it in Silverstone last year, if you remember. But obviously, Verstappen's good everywhere. I'm just being facetious here. So, I think maybe it's less who's good in the rain and more who makes good judgment in the rain, right? When do they pit? And how do these cars perform, in the rain? We haven't really found that out yet. And how do the drivers perform in these cars in the rain? So, we're Monday and the race is 6 days away. So, things could change hugely. Okay, let's move on to Formula1.com. And as of 58 minutes ago, there's an article here about Alonso and his future beyond 2026. Now, I know that his contract runs out theoretically at the end of 2026. I don't know if this is what this is about, but let's see. Alonso has voiced his hope that 2026 will not be the last season for him. He feels that it is not time yet to retire. So it goes on to say that in an interview last year, the two-time world champion hinted that his decision on whether to race beyond 2026 would depend on how the team's car performed, telling AS.com in his native Spanish, "If the car goes well, there's a good chance it will be my last year." Well, never fear, Fernando, because it ain't going well. However, speaking at the historic Grand Prix of Monaco before the F1 season resumes in Miami, Alonso suggested that he would like to stay in the sport. "I love what I do," this is a quote. "I love racing. I did my first race when I was 3 years old and I'm 44. So 41 years of my life, I've been behind a steering wheel. So the moment I have to stop racing, it will be a very hard decision and difficult to accept. The time will tell. I will feel it. At the moment, I don't feel it's time yet. I feel competitive, I feel motivated, I feel happy when I drive. So yeah, hopefully not the last season." I mean, this guy, he is a machine, right? He just goes on and on. Let's look at some Fernando Alonso stats. Let me All right, let's pull up Fernando Alonso. All right, Fernando Alonso Diaz. Born 29th of July 1981 in Oviedo. So he's 44 years old. He's about to turn 45 in a couple of months. He's Spanish. You know this. All right, so his first race was at the beginning of the season in 2001 in Australia. He started pre-9/11. Isn't that just insane? How long Fernando Alonso has been racing? I mean, that's so crazy. He has been involved in 431 Grand Prix weekends and has started 428 Grand Prix. He's won 2 championships, as we know, and has had 84 retirements. He has scored 2,393 points in his career. Now, you could argue it should have been more, given his skill and quality. He has raced 23,189 laps, which is 116,240 kilometers raced. So, he has been at this for a long time. Should he retire? Well, no. If he's feeling it and he's competing and he's absolutely demolishing Lance Stroll year after year, why would he retire? Why would you get rid of him? Doesn't make any sense. If he's competing and he's still doing his thing, why stop? He hasn't raced every season since he began. He didn't race in 2002, and he had that break. I think it was 19 and 20 he had the break. And obviously 20 was a compromise season anyway with COVID and all that. So, if anyone deserves a break, it's him. But he's loving what he does, so why stop? And he's still competitive. Some Fernando Alonso facts for you there. Pretty impressive chap. And, the thing that isn't impressive are his career choices. He seems to have gone to the wrong place at the wrong time, every time almost. But even so, he's made the best of it. Of course, he went to Benetton. He was in Benetton at the right time with Flavio, and, they did the thing that they did. He doesn't seem to be particularly incredible at developing a car with a team. He's not a Michael Schumacher in that respect. He didn't go to Ferrari and turn them around and regain the success of the Schumacher era. It was a disaster when he went back to McLaren. He was okay at the start of Aston Martin, and it hasn't gone anywhere. And this year is nothing to do with the driver. Let's be honest, it's nothing to do with either driver. But yeah, that was obviously the big issue with Fernando is, wrong place at the wrong time. Although he is a double world champion, so how bad can it be? But you could argue he could have been competing against the sort of Lewis era time in a better car and really lay the gauntlet down. Now, a lot of people forget this, I think, that Lewis joined McLaren when the first time Fernando was at McLaren, and in his first year, they actually finished on the same amount of points, I think, but because of, count back, Lewis beat him technically in his rookie year at McLaren. But, they're quite closely matched in terms of, their skill level. Lewis, 7-time world champion, I think you could pretty much categorically say is a better driver. But there's not a lot in it. Like, there really isn't a lot in it between any of these drivers. If you really, really look at it, they're all actually exceptional, and, the differences are rather marginal. But yeah, Fernando Alonso, fantastic driver. Hope he stays in the sport until he's, hobbling around with a Zimmer frame. Okay, here's a story on Planet F1. Gianpiero Lambiasi faces awkward Red Bull scenario, warns David Coulthard. So, this is what I thought when he was announced as going to McLaren. He is due to start McLaren in 2028, and he's contracted to Red Bull until the end of 2027. So usually there's some kind of gardening leave period where if a key team member goes to another team, the team where they're currently at don't want to have all their secrets shared with this new team. So they basically stipulate that this person has to take a big break before going to the next team so they don't get the latest information. Now, there is currently no break except for the winter break, in these two contracts right now. So what's possibly almost definitely going to happen is that Red Bull are going to have to start keeping Lambiasi out of meetings and keeping information from him maybe as soon as this year at some point, because he's going to then go to McLaren in 28 and give everything that he knows to McLaren. Now, you could argue, well, what do McLaren care about Red Bull? They're far exceeding Red Bull this year, at least right now. Well, don't rule Red Bull out. They may have some issues right now, but they're still a mega championship and driver winning team who know what they're doing, even with this personnel shift. So all the teams are fully aware of what Red Bull have to offer. So I think this is going to be awkward. This is going to get to an awkward phase, and this is what Coulthard is talking about. Let's see if we can get some quotes from Coulthard. So Coulthard says, of course, one of the tricky moments for Red Bull is he can't walk out of the factory with a laptop with all the data at the end of the year, but what's in your mind, you're allowed to take with you. So there'll be a point where they're going to want to say, look, you can't really be working on this car, or you certainly can't be across any of the discussions about developments going into 2027 and beyond. Yeah, what I just said. So that becomes an awkward scenario. I've been there as a driver, he continued, where at the end of 1995, I'd already signed to join McLaren. You still go about the race weekend in normal fashion, but I wasn't anymore allowed to go into certain areas in the factory when I went to Williams. Understandably so, because I'm moving to another team. So it just starts to erode the relationship and make it a little bit of a compromise. Yeah, and Lambiasi is not a driver. He's part of the team. He's the race engineer. He should be knowing this information to get the best, to do his job the best, right? So there's a bit of a compromise there. Now, second half of the season, maybe next year, they know the car. Maybe they're not developing that specific car as much for the rest of the season, depending on where they are in the championship. So maybe it's not quite so crucial. However, it's still a compromise. So that's interesting. That really was the first thing that I thought when he said he's moving to McLaren, and there was this clear butting up of the two contracts that it meant that was the case. So yeah, also begs the question, what would he take to McLaren? Some cultural thing, some technical knowledge, some, whatever else it is. Yeah, really interesting. So as we wrap up here, what do we think about the race this coming weekend? What do we think is going to happen? Well, Antonelli is on fire. He's on a run, and he was great in Miami last year. Do you remember? He qualified for the sprint, I think, last year. I don't think he won either race, but he was on the podium. He did very well in Miami last year. This was a track that he really excelled at. And just, there were no setup discrepancies. There was no bad luck with George. He just outdrove him, particularly in the sprint side of the weekend. So I'm expecting Antonelli to do pretty well unless something random happens. Do we think George has got it in him to fight back? Of course. Of course he does. But, I mean, if we're going on form, I would say the energy is with Kimi this weekend. I think the McLaren team are going to do very well. I think their form was disguised in the first two races by there only being one start. And in Japan, you saw a bit of a window into their potential. And I think, given how fast they developed that car over the previous 3 years, I think their development process is exceptional. And I think they will start coming back and eating into this advantage that the mother team has with the power unit and everything, because I think they've got a great car. I think they don't quite understand the power unit fully. And so I think McLaren are going to do well. Interesting what Ferrari have learned in their testing over the past few weeks. Are they going to introduce the Macarena wing over the next few races? Maybe this is something they do in Monza when they really want to just dump all downforce on those huge, great long straights and just have something to compete with in the chicanes and the Parabolica in the final corner. Who knows what's going on with Red Bull? Quite frankly, what on earth is happening? Can Haas keep their momentum going? Racing Bulls are doing okay. You know, there's tons of stories. Will Williams finally get their act together? What on earth is going to happen with Aston Martin? Will they have fixed this vibration issue? And when they fix these fundamental issues, where actually are they? Where is this Honda power unit? Where is this car? All these incredible design implementations from Newey for this car, we have no idea whether they're incredible or not, because the car has just been so awful to drive. And does Fernando still have it? I'm going to hazard a guess that he does. So yeah, that was today. All over the map a bit today. Potential rain in Miami. Interesting news regarding Gen 4 Formula E. Fernando Alonso, a beast, been at it for forever. And Gianpiero Lambiasi, some potential awkwardness in his future. That's all for me today. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I will be back tomorrow with more ramblings. Bye-bye for now. I've been your host, Jamie Muffett. You can find me on social media for more of this rambling nonsense under my name or F1_Jamie. This is an RPS audio production.